Okay, I'm gonna stay back here and try to manipulate the screen at the same time. We're starting a new unit. We're finished with the theories and the theorists, and we are now moving on to pregnancy and prenatal care and all that good stuff. So this unit takes a little longer. It'll take us more than this 6 weeks. We'll be finishing it up the first part of next 6 weeks. But there's good information here. So the more you ask questions, the more you interact, the more we'll get out of it. So here's the assignment. If you follow the link, you will open up your notes, which are here. You may have to make a copy. I set it up so you would not. I did everything right. Last class, it worked. They did not have to make a copy. My first class, they did have to make a copy. So I don't really know what you're going to get. But set it up. If you have to make a copy, make your copy, get your own. Just a little bit of information about the slides. As you fill out the slides, you'll see the blanks. I think I created it a little better this time than last. You'll see the blanks and you'll be able to click and type on the blank. Now, one slide, 3 or 4 slides in, when you click, you can't not click. I screwed up, my mistake. What I did to make it work is I put a text box over the blank. So what you'll need to do is just click on that if there's not one there. And you'll just insert a text box. So you can go to insert text box, or you can go to the text, the little box with a T in it for text, and insert that over the blank and type what you need. Okay, so I'm going to move to my notes. Now, we'll start at the beginning, but one thing I did a little different in this unit is I shared my slides with you as a material. So if you can't see the board real good from the glare, you can look on your screen, split screen, and you'll have both, and go through the slides with me. All right. So this unit is, let me don't present. Okay, stages of pregnancy is this unit. So we'll cover every stage from conception, preconception, all the way through labor and delivery, and then we'll move into children and stuff after that. So basic things that we'll address is how do we determine if it's a healthy pregnancy, the birth process, importance of prenatal care. Okay. Here's the units that it's broken down into. So basically it's the 3 trimesters with the preconception and then the labor, delivery, and lactation, because breastfeeding is such a huge push nowadays, and so we really need to take the time to address that. There's not anything on it. I hadn't got to the one where we have blanks yet. Oh, okay. I'm almost there. Hang on, let's see where we're at. This is where we need to be. Right? Is that your first slide with the notes? Okay. Preconception, health care. You need to take care of yourself before you become pregnant. So pregnancy, the healthiest, best case scenario is a planned pregnancy. Do unplanned pregnancies happen? Yes, they happen all the time. We probably know, everybody knows someone that's had an unplanned pregnancy. Yay.
We just had our baby shower.
Oh, how fun. So yes, it can happen. Best case scenario is to plan for that baby so that you can do everything possible to ensure you have a healthy baby when they're born. As soon as you find out, you need to switch what you're doing, change your lifestyle, and move to a healthy lifestyle also. So we're going to go through some of the things. So it also refers to knowing your health conditions and your risk factors. If you have a heart disease, if you have seizures, if you are a diabetic, there's a whole list of things that could be issues for you when you're pregnant that you would need to deal with and address. Pregnancy affects our body very crazy, and we have a lot of hormone issues. If you're diabetic, it can cause highs and lows in your blood sugar, which can transfer to the baby and have problems. So you have to pay attention to all of that. And so it's really important if you have some of those issues to plan your pregnancies. And it's best to plan those with your doctor so that everything is ready to go. So you would need to know your food habits, medicines, anything that could harm a baby you would want to prevent. Can I move slides? Okay. Okay. So it's important to stay healthy. The advantages are a healthy baby. It reduces premature births. Does not guarantee it, just helps reduce it. There's also a way to be prepared for an unplanned pregnancy. And the more I do some research, there's a lot of things that are changing to help you prepare for an unplanned pregnancy. It used to be that you took prenatal vitamins, like right before you got pregnant and then throughout the pregnancy and then while you were breastfeeding. There's new studies saying that women of the childbearing age, it's not a bad idea to take prenatal vitamins throughout your childbearing years. You can run into risk with that because some vitamins are fat soluble and some are water soluble. A water soluble vitamin you cannot overdose on, which means that what your body doesn't use is eliminated through urine. So if you go to the restroom, you lose it. Fat soluble vitamins are, as your body processes them, what it doesn't need or use, it stores in your fat in your body. And you can actually overdose from those.
Does it make you fat?
No, it doesn't make you fat. It's just how they're stored. Like, oh, it's got all these nutrients. I don't need it. It stores it. Just like when you take food. If you eat too much food, what your body doesn't use, it stores as fat. So those vitamins store in the fat, and you can get an overdose that way. So as that fat is released and burned, you could have too many cells that have too much in it, and you can have issues. So if that becomes a thing, they would they would adjust those vitamins to where they're really low in fat soluble and higher in water soluble. As a country, we tend to take a multivitamin more than most countries do. So we tend to have higher vitamin. We have less deficiency diseases than other countries. But healthy makes it a lot easier to conceive. If you're unhealthy, sometimes you have trouble. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about the vitamins. This take 400 to 800 micrograms of folic acid. Folic acid is a B vitamin, and it helps with brain development. And brain development starts as early as the first 2 weeks of pregnancy. Just a little information. The day you have a missed period, the day you find out you're pregnant, you are 4 weeks pregnant. So, with that being said, 2 weeks prior to, we've already got brain development starting. And so if you have some issues there, you can have problems. Folic acid also helps with like cleft palate and some things like that. Do y'all know what cleft palate is? It's like where the lip's not quite right, or maybe the roof of the mouth didn't form properly. And so those are things that it helps prevent. Marchidons is a big pusher for folic acid. We're going to research that next class. Okay. So you should stop smoking and stop drinking. And I'm going to go ahead and add it in, and it is not there. You should stop vaping. Vaping is the same thing as smoking. You may, in your mind, go, oh, I don't smoke, but I vape. It's the same. It's the same ingredients that go into it. Yes, it's different consistencies, but it's still there, and they still have negative effects. Vaping is not as researched as cigarettes, where we know, yes, you can get cancer, guaranteed. Vaping has not been popular long enough for us to have the data there. But we do know that you have nicotine. If you can choose the ingredients that go into that vape, and I know they're constantly tweaking that. So it's kind of scary, and you just don't want to take that risk. We're seeing a lot of addiction with vapes really quick because you can increase them, and they have a different, some are very complicated. And then some are really simple. Some are just like a little jewel. You go buy the cartridge, and they can tweak what's in those cartridges that you buy. And then some, you have people that can custom blend and make all kinds of things. So be careful. That isn't something you would need to quit. talk to your doctor about over the counter and prescription medications. If you are a person that has to have constant medical care for some underlying issue, don't just go get pregnant. Yes, accidents happen, but plan as best you can and make sure those medicines are okay. Because sometimes, like seizure medications and things like that, they need to switch. Like this one's really better, but this one's better for the baby, and it'll be okay for a few months. And so those things need to be in place. Avoid contact with toxic substances. So be careful with cleaning products, things like that during pregnancy. Switch way. All right, signs. These are just typical signs and symptoms that are out there. And so you'll hear stuff and go, oh, this, and this. And so these are just things that can happen. Now, the darkening of the areola is the dark part of the breast. It's the area around the nipple. It will darken in the first 14 weeks. It's one of the first signs. Some people, it's very subtle though. Some people never notice it. And then tender or swollen breast. The breast tissue is connected to the reproductive system. So as the baby starts to develop, your hormones are rapidly increasing, rapidly changing, which is also going to affect the breast tissue. And starting to wake up the mammary glands, all that kind of stuff starting to happen. So you have some uncomfortable feelings during that time. Exhaustion. The first 6 weeks, you're the most exhausted. It does change. A lot of people are really tired at the end, but that first 6 weeks, there's so much going on and you're usually not aware. And so you're busy anyway. And then it's just kind of, oh no, I've done too much and you can't figure it out. Oftentimes you don't find out you're pregnant until at the end of that 6 weeks. Because remember, the day you miss a period, you're 4 weeks. If you're a person that has irregular periods where you only have one every couple of months or so, you may not know. Nausea and vomiting. 2 to 8 weeks after conception, it's when it kind of really starts picking up. It's due to that rapid hormone increase, which levels out later in the pregnancy. It also creates, at this time, you have excessive amounts of saliva. So you have a lot of spit. So you're constantly swallowing. The more you swallow, that's filling in your stomach, and then you add stuff with it, and you have more there than you normally would, which creates part of the nausea. At 2 to 4 weeks is when you would have a missed period that you would notice pregnancy. Conception happens at 2 weeks. So after the first day of the period, in the middle of the cycle, that's when conception would happen. And then what's happened is the egg has traveled through the fallopian tubes and gone to the uterus, and it has attached. Therefore, you have a missed period. If it does not attach, that's when the lining comes off, and that's what the menstrual period is. So every month, your body prepares for pregnancy. So it always starts over every month with week 1, and then goes through. All right. I love this one, frequent urination. I see it a lot here, especially with younger pregnancies. They're like, oh my gosh, I just took a pregnancy test and I got to pee all the time. That's a nervous pee. 6 to 8 weeks. It takes a little bit of time. It's after that time. It's got to do with how the body progresses and the weight gain, and those things start happening. And in those first few weeks, you just don't have those symptoms. The fetal heartbeat, you can hear it at 10 weeks. So if the doctor put a stethoscope to your stomach, they can hear the fetal heart at that time. So what happens is you find out you're pregnant. You take a home pregnancy test as soon as you miss a period. If you're really trying, you're doing this calculator and you know exactly when you ovulated, so you're taking your pregnancy test pretty much every day, trying to find out because you're excited. But once you find out you're pregnant, you need to call your healthcare provider quickly. Doctors, midwives can only deliver so many babies a month, and they have a set number. And especially with your first baby, oftentimes if you've delivered a baby with them before, they will go ahead and do it for you after they've met their quota. They kind of reserve a few just for their returning patients, but you call and say, hey, I'm pregnant and can I come in? And they're going to say, no, we've reached our quota. You need to try another doctor. Oftentimes they'll say, we have another doctor in our practice that can take you this month. Or sometimes they'll just say, hey, we're full. And that happens. Big practices get full. And if you think about it, we kind of have a baby boom coming up because of the quarantine. We had a lot of pregnancies happen during the quarantine. So yeah. I mean, and we all are like, oh yeah, so yeah. You're seeing all these baby announcements and all that, and that's because they were at home. And that's what happened. So, call a doctor immediately. Get on the list because those doctors filled up, and they can only take so many. I mean, think about it. If they took more than 30 or so, I mean, think about how often they would be delivering, and oftentimes they would have too many deliveries in one day. And as a patient, you don't want that. You don't want to be the 5th baby that doctors delivered that day. You want them to be fresh. All right, backaches can happen the entire pregnancy. It's got a lot to do with the position of your uterus, but the growth of the baby it adds weight to your back. Frequent headaches that can happen throughout. It's got a lot to do with the hormone change and your body's constantly processing everything, and that baby takes a lot from you. So a lot of times too, if you're lacking in something nutrient-wise, the baby's going to take it. And so you know how sometimes you go, I'm really hungry or I need this or whatever, you kind of get a headache from that. That's kind of what's happening. Baby's taking what they need. So there's a lot of causes behind why you have a headache. Food cravings. That happens throughout the pregnancy, and all people say, why do people have all these weird things and weird combinations? It's got to do with the baby takes what it needs. So you eat your normal amount of stuff, and the baby's pulling what they need. Well, if they needed more sodium, and then you didn't take in enough, and so then your cravings can see. You'll see people crave pickles and things like that. It's usually because it's an item that their body needs, something nutrient-wise in that your body needs. So you crave it, and you tend to go to things you like. So that's kind of how that happens. But your taste can also change, and it's got to do with all the hormones and the saliva and all those weird things. You can have a funny taste in your mouth, so it can change the combinations that you like. You're like, ooh, I don't like that any other time, but that sounded good now. Body probably just needs something weird. Okay, due date. I'm going to show you how to do it mathematically. But that you don't have to do it this way because we have nice technology now. But this is the formula. You take the first day of your period, you add 1 year. So if it was today, September 30th? So we would add, it would be September 30th, 2021. Then we subtract 3 months. So what's 3? August, September, no, August, so June. So June 30th plus 7 days. So June 30th plus, so July 7th would be the due date of 2020. It's complicated. There's the formula at the bottom. There's the steps to go through it. All right, here's a sample. April 17th of 14 to April 17th of 15. Then you back up 3 months, that's January 17th. And then add your 7 days, so January 24th. Now, that's the mathematical way to do it if you want to just calculate it that way. Or you can search for an app. There's a ton of them on your phone. You can just Google search it, and you can go to websites. You don't even have to go to an app. The what to expect when you're expecting website and app are actually really pretty good, and they have some built into that. There's a lot of good information in that site. I use it quite a bit. Okay. Prenatal care is the care you get from your medical provider during pregnancy. This could be a doctor, a certified nurse, midwife, or a midwife. Those are the basic categories. The difference between those categories are obviously the doctor is an obstetrician. They have a medical degree and they're a doctor. A certified nurse midwife is a registered nurse first. They went back to school. They had additional training and went through a whole nother training certification process to become a midwife. So they're a nurse and a midwife. They have both. So close to a nurse practitioner. And they typically work with a doctor. A lot of your larger obstetrician and gynecology doctors' offices in the area and around will often have a midwife that's associated with them. You can use either. Insurance typically pays for both of those. If you use a nurse midwife, they are associated with a doctor. They have to work under a doctor. They can practice independently, but if there is a problem, they have a designated doctor that says, hey, I'm going to help you. So locally, we have some facilities that have that. So typically when those nurse midwives deliver, they typically deliver in their facility, and they have like some nice little home-like setting where you're very relaxed. It's not quite your home, but yeah, it's a real comfortable place, and you have a little more control. If something were to go wrong, they literally take you and roll you over to the hospital portion, and you go, and if you need a C-section or some emergency happens, they're trained to handle that. The third option is a certified midwife, which means they have attended a set number and participated in a certain number of births, and they've delivered so many babies. Some states have testing, some states do not. There's not a national regulations service. There are some, but there's not a law saying you have to go through this. So I personally know someone that is going through that right now. She was also a bit academically challenged in school. That was not her real strong point. And so that's kind of scary. That if, hey, they struggle and they can't pass these tests and they can't be certified and they can't do these things on their own because they're academically struggle, is that really who you want to have the health of your baby's life and yours in their hands? It's a little scary. So you really, really need to do your research before you go into that, because a lot of things can go wrong. A lot of things can be perfect and no problem at all. But you've got to weigh your odds and look at all things and be responsible for that. Can you live with the situation if you chose what you wanted and it didn't work out? Can you be okay? Because it becomes your responsibility. But those are the options. Any of those, you're still going to have a regular visit with those professionals. They're going to keep your heart rate. They're going to measure the baby. They're going to see where it's at. And they're going to go through the pregnancy with you. So, super important to stay healthy. So you want to avoid a lot of things. You want to avoid sickness. A lot of sites will say they recommend a flu shot. It just reduces complications, and you don't really want to take that risk. They're not super clear on the risk of COVID and pregnancy, so that's kind of scary. There have been cases where the mom's had it, the baby hasn't. There have also been cases where the baby's actually had it. So it's a scary situation that we just don't know enough about. So you really need to avoid certain things. Can also reduce the risk of sudden infant death syndrome, which is something we'll talk about next class. We'll do some articles, read them, and talk about them. Sudden infant death syndrome is where a baby just all of a sudden dies and you really don't know why. There's a lot of different causes behind that. We'll talk about that in depth next class, though. Doctors and medical professionals can determine if there's a pregnancy problem early. Even your midwives, even your non-certified midwives can still pick up on some issues. So they'll listen to your heart rate, and they'll listen to the babies, and they'll do all that. And they can kind of determine some things. So take that into consideration. If you do not receive any prenatal care, you are 3 times more likely to have a low birth weight baby because you didn't get proper nutrition and you didn't do things right. Oftentimes, you continued habits that you should not have continued throughout the pregnancy. And the reason why this is there is because if you didn't get medical care, there's usually other underlying issues for not getting the medical care. They're also 5 times more likely to miscarry. let's clarify some details about miscarriages though. 1 in 4 pregnancies, healthy, 1 in 4 miscarry. That's the percentage. Often it's very early. Often it's before the mom even knew she was pregnant. A lot of times it's before it didn't implant properly. And so it just naturally takes care of that. But 1 in 4, that's a really high number. And then if you don't get medical care, you are 5 times more likely to have a miscarriage. And those tend to be later in the pregnancy, which become more high risk, more dangerous. And then there's the emotional issues that go with that. Is that the last slide for y'all for today? Perfect. Okay, we're done with that. Next class, I'm going to have a couple of articles and some videos over folic acid and sudden infant death syndrome. We'll do those and do a discussion with those. That's it for this one.
We're done for this class.
We're done for today.
Yeah, I don't know. You want to turn it in there?
As long as they're attached, you don't have to turn them in.
Is it okay if we turn it in?
It is okay if you turn it in. As long as it's attached, I have it.
I like turning it in because if I don't, it says it's late.
Yeah.